Good evening. We will go ahead and call to order tonight's Indian Hill School Board meeting. Tonight is March 8th, 6:30 p.m. If we could do a roll call.
Mrs. Eichholz?
Here.
Mr. Marks?
Present.
Mrs. Singh?
Here.
Mr. Summerall?
Here.
Mr. Tullis?
Here. With that, I would ask if there is a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda and the addendum to the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And with that, we will stand in recess until 7 o'clock. Unless, I'm sorry, is there anybody who's going to make a motion for executive session tonight? Nope. We will stand in recess till 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, we're back. We're live.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. This is by far the biggest crowd we've had in the 3 months I've been part of the board, so thank you all for being here. It's an exciting agenda. We will call the meeting back to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, we will start with Mr. Konecki's superintendent report and our correspondence, recognitions, and announcements.
Welcome, board members, and welcome to all of our guests tonight. As you can see, board members, it's a full house this evening. That's because we have 3 very special presentations tonight as part of our recognition. I am going to not review letters D through N tonight. We're going to focus on the top 3 just for your reference, and we're going to go ahead and get started now. Mr. Simini, if you could help me out there. First up, I'd like to ask the team of educators who are here tonight who brought Les Mis to life to join us up on stage. Show director, Mr. Jeff Clark, if you could come up with your crew, please. We're going to put the spotlight on you for a few moments and ask you to share some thoughts about this magnificent performance of Les Miserables that we all hopefully got to experience in the last couple of weeks. Mr. Clark, thank you. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but we're going to put you on the spot here.
All right. Well, I will just say, first and foremost, thank you to the district and Board of Education. Just the simple fact that a week ago, this place was full of people after the crazy time we've had over the past few years to see live audiences. And I just know that the smiles that occur on our students' faces, regardless of whether they're in the pit orchestra backstage, up in the booth, working the soundboard, on stage as performers. The live performance that was happening here was just magical. I know so many people were able to experience that. So a big thank you to all of you for allowing that to happen. The team behind me, there's several people I know not here. Mr. Samini up there, the almighty powerful Mr. Samini with his amazing tech work. Bravo to him. There's so many unsung heroes, and again, I mentioned the pit orchestra and our tech crew, but there's so many little things that happen behind the scenes, and I couldn't have done that, again, without our brilliant tech crew, without the orchestra, without the cast who started auditions, I think, was it October, November-ish, right? And then we kind of started the rehearsals going in the choir room, and then only, a week before Tech Week did we actually move down here. And as many of you saw, the craziness, I always said this show has a lot of moving parts, and if you can see by the turntable in itself, which gave us a lot of fits, but a lot of amazing things. You walk in here and you see the stage built up just like you're seeing a touring show coming to the Aronoff. And just the fact that we were able to make that happen here and create the magic on this stage when we're all just craving that live performance was just an amazing opportunity. So a huge thank you again to the team, to the students. We'll make sure we have another big show next year and just keep the wow going. So.
You all could just stay there for
Yeah.
a moment, please. Okay, and we have to take time, of course, and celebrate our amazing students are here on stage. I'll be getting autographs after the meeting from many of you. The behind-the-scenes production crew is here. This was an absolutely stunning performance. This happens to be my favorite show, and many of you probably your favorite show. Very powerful moment, I think, for our students, our parents, and our community, and I think timely. Bravo to every brave student who is involved. Would you please do us a favor, students, and join us up on stage one more time so that we can congratulate you all. If you could just come on up. You've been here before. Come on up.
That's so crazy. Get it. Get on that stage.
Yeah.
I'm still up. You're still there.
One of the things that's amazing about this production is just how many students were involved, K through 12, in our community. And I know not everybody is here tonight, but I think this gives you a little taste of just how many went into the production and how much talent we have in this district in our performing arts group. Let's give them another round of applause for a wonderful performance. Thank you all. Thank you, students, so much. We're so proud of you. Mr. Clark and the crew, thank you all so much. We appreciate you. You can exit stage right.
I'd like stage left, but
Or left. Your choice. You can just see from the slides how many people were involved here on the creative team side and then the student side. There actually wasn't enough room on all the slides for all of the students and crew. We really worked to get them all. It's amazing. Again, thank you all.
Kirk, if I could, just on behalf of the board and really the community, echo the thanks to Jeff Clark, his team, to all the students who put on the show. It was truly stunning. I told Jeff that I was here twice with my 8-year-old daughter, and I think one thing that's missed is when these shows get put on, how much it inspires the younger kids. And my daughter is already excited for what's to come. So it was a tremendous community engagement, and thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask our 6-time state champion swimmer Gibson Holmes and our athletic director Brian Phelps to come up to the stage, please. I'll see if I get this right, Mr. Phelps, and then I'll turn it over to you. Our high school junior, Gibson Holmes, is now a 6-time OHSAA state champion after adding to his already impressive resume during the February 26-27 weekend at the OHSAA swim meet. Gibson broke the state record in 2 events this year, the 200 IM and the 100 butterfly, earning 2 state champion titles to add to his list this February. Congratulations, Gibson, just absolutely amazing. Mr. Phelps, did you want to add anything?
I'm going to chat just real quick about both of our student athletes.
If you're going to do both, let me just bring our next one up and we'll do that first, okay? Ella Riggs is also here with us tonight. Ella, if you could join us. Ella is now the all-time scoring leader in basketball, boys or girls, at Indian Hill, and during the month of February, she took that title. She's a 4-year varsity starter. She's had an incredible resume of accolades dating back to her freshman year, and as a senior was named CHL Conference Player of the Year, First Team All-District, Inquirer Player of the Week, Cincinnati Northern Kentucky All-Star Team, and for her broken records here, all-time scoring record at 1,730 total career points and single season points of 523. Again, stellar career. I'm so excited in watching you play, and I can't wait to see you at the next level. Congratulations, Ella.
Congratulations to both Ella and Gibson on your achievements and accolades. It's truly impressive the careers that you've both had to this point. Ella, it will be exciting to see you move on to Furman next year, and Gibson, I would say there's more state championships and records to win next year as a senior. What also does not go unnoticed is the amazing students that you both are. I know both of you are well above a 4.0 GPA and you work very hard in the classroom. Tonight is not only celebrating your unbelievable achievements on the court and in the pool, but also the amazing work you do in the classroom and the community members you are here at Indian Hill. It's also important to note, and I know you both have said this many times yourselves, that you are not here tonight without an amazing support system. I know how much you value your friends, your teammates, your coaches, teachers, and most importantly, your family. You have put the time and effort and grit into being great. You deserve this recognition tonight, and we are all very proud, and not only the student athletes you are, but the people you continue to be. Congratulations.
We had an amazing February, as you can see from the board agenda. There were so many things happening in this district in February, and of course, live music performances were amazing. We'll move on, if that's okay at this time. Mr. Tullis.
I would note I'm wearing my purple shirt in support of Ella and her choice to go to Furman University, of which I'm a very proud and now even prouder alumni. So congratulations. With that, Kirk, we'll move to the public commentary. Nick?
We do have a couple of community members signed for this evening. Please keep in mind that you need to keep your remarks to 5 minutes. As I call you up, please state who you are and your address. And then if you have prepared public remarks, I ask that if you leave them, if possible, that way I can record those in the minutes as they are said. So first up, I have Emily Overton. You're not the first person to do that, so. So Mandy Longbottom? Same? Okay, all right.
My wife did that the very first school board meeting I was at, so no problems.
It's all good. Thank you.
So we have no public
I
comment.
thought they wanted to put some Les Mis commentary into the record. That's what I thought. Okay.
With that, Kirk, we'll go to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. First up tonight, members, we have the first reading of academic schools fees for the 22-23 school year. If you could just review that over the next month and let me know if you have any questions. We don't have any plans to raise any fees at this time, and I can answer any questions outside the meeting. Letter B, under number 7, we have the approval of some future overnight field trips to consider. Letter C, some personnel actions, tuition reimbursements, professional meeting approvals. Under number 2, a retirement resignation. Number 3, some supplemental contracts moving forward. Number 4, the approval of supplemental personal service contracts from winter sports and tournament time. And number 5, several tuition reimbursements. We also have a separate resolution under D for declaring the impracticability of transportation, offering payment in lieu of transportation. And I would point out on the addendum under C, we also have an additional item there, C4P, for an additional supplemental. If there are no questions, I would ask the board to entertain 7B through C. You don't need to do anything with A. I think we could do D separate. Or we could add D in. Okay, so B through D, 7B through D, as well as the addendum item at this time.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Summerall?
Yes.
Mrs. Eichholz?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mrs. Singh?
Aye.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
Thank you, and I'd like to just point out on the addendum, letter C4P, the hiring of Adam Boehm as our new golf program director and head coach. We're very happy to welcome Adam to the program. I think you'll see in reviewing his resume, he has a wealth of experience as a PGA member and is going to help us do some amazing things with that program. So we're really excited to welcome Adam to Indian Hill. That's all for my report.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, Treasurer's report, please.
Certainly. Under my report this evening, I have to approve the minutes of the February 8th, 2022 regular meeting, to approve the financial reports for the month ending February 28th, 2022, to approve the release of a food service management company request for proposal and contract as approved by the Ohio Department of Education. What this is because we're on the National School Lunch Program at both the primary and elementary school, we are required to do an RFP every 5 years. As part of that program, over the last 2 years, that has been, we've been given an extension by the Department of Agriculture because of the pandemic. So we are now up for that RFP. This is simply, I've sent the documents over to the Ohio Department of Education. They're in the process of approving. This is simply giving the board's approval for me to go ahead and, once that comes back from the Ohio Department of Education, to post that and begin to take those RFPs and evaluate them as they come in. Item D is there was one construction contract for this evening. It is for Suzy Q Logistics. It's an electrical gear pre-purchase, $492,463. If you remember, we have approved a number of these items over the last couple of months. There is a long lead time for this item, so we need to get it approved and get the purchase order and get that out so we can get that ordered and on its way. That brings most of my report this evening. The longest part of my report is the acceptance of donations, which is always the best part of my report. Under item E, we have 5 items. The boosters donated to the high school for our Technology Student Association, $630. The boosters to the High School HOSA Association, $1,000. And then finally, the boosters to the Society of Women in Engineering for $1,200. The IH Foundation donated to the elementary school breakout boxes for Go Time, $476. And then also to the high school biology department for the capstone program, $1,500. It's always good to announce the donations and how much we appreciate our partner organizations and what they do for both our community and our school district. So with that, I would like to get an approval for items A through E, and then I will conclude with items F and G after that is approved and passed.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Eichholz?
Aye.
Mr. Summerall?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
Under item F is the acceptance of another donation. It's from AAA Bob Summerall Tire and Service. It's to the athletics department for the high school gym scoreboard. This is that company's second installment of 3. We were so fortunate to gain their donation, as well as another company that we've approved in the past for the full price of those gymnasium scoreboards. So again, without those wonderful donations, we wouldn't be able to have the some of the items that we have for both athletics, arts, and our academics. So again, we appreciate those donations, and we look forward to how our community continues to give.
I move to approve item F.
Second.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mrs. Eicholtz?
Aye.
Mr. Summerall?
Yes.
Mr. Summerall, this is the item that you need to,
Abstain.
yes. Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
Thank you. And then we go to item G, finally, the final acceptance of a donation. This is from Protect Ed. It's to the district. It's 143 NanoStrike air disinfection units with a value of $355,192. Again, a wonderful donation that we will be able to help keep our students safe and secure while we finish fighting this pandemic. And we will be able to use these in all of our buildings moving forward. So a wonderful donation by Protect Ed. And again, very appreciative of that. It helps keep our kids safe and healthy. So with that, I'll ask for a motion.
Move to accept.
Second.
Mrs. Eicholtz?
Aye.
Mr. Summerall?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Abstain.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
That concludes my report for this evening. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to add a thank you to all those who continue to make donations to the district on behalf of the district. We are so blessed to have so much help in so many of our academic, athletic, performing arts areas, and especially this safety donation is very significant for our buildings moving forward. Really appreciate it. Next up, board members, under number 9, we have the first reading of some Neola policies. If you could please let me know if you have any questions, if you have a chance to review those in the coming weeks. This is just a first reading. Most of these are minor language amendments or modifications to current policy.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to the other business by the board and administration. Any updates from any of the committees on the Operations Committee, Finance Committee, or Personnel Committee to share? We've all seen the meeting minutes, and they're all available online as well. Okay. With that, we'll move to the project team.
Yeah, I'd like to invite our project team members up at this time. We have representatives from MCS, Skanska, and MSA here, and we will let them introduce themselves and get ready. Board members, we obviously have the big screen here, so whatever makes you most comfortable to be able to see the slide deck presentation. They're going to be sharing some slides with us here. We'll get set up and get started. I'm gonna pull it up. That's the one you sent, this last one, right? Here. I think we're good. As long as it shows. No, I can click through it. You just tell me when to advance. Okay. Mr. Samini, if you could help us out there, please.
You hear me? Appreciate everyone having the opportunity. We're excited to be here this evening to share updates on the project. I know it's been quite some time since we've all been working on these, and so just be able to show the progress. I'm Chris Patek with MSA Design, kind of leading the design effort. Mike Murdoch is here as well with Moats, part of the design team. We'll get a chance to get up here in a minute. Mike Mendenhall with MCS, owner rep side, and then Pete Becker with Skanska, the construction partner. So what we want to do is just really run through at a high level, kind of where the project is at this point, go through some design items, some schedule and budget updates as well, and leave some time for some Q&A. So when we start off talking about these projects, as I mentioned, it's been quite some time working with a lot of different stakeholders across the board in the school and the community. And so we always like to kind of focus on the purpose and the key aspects and objectives to the project every time we start off. And so this slide really kind of touches on some of those key points moving forward. As I mentioned, we've really been continuing to engage with stakeholders at various levels throughout the process. We'll continue to do that even as we get into final design and construction, talking with faculty and staff and students, providing opportunities to continue to refine the projects as we move through. As we look at the middle school and the high school, the first project we'll kind of talk through. Get the next one there, Kirk. From the site perspective, you're starting to see a lot more defined development of the site itself. So as we talked about all along on the kind of bottom of this slide is the parking and the kind of main face of the new middle school and the high school. So the middle school is the red space that you see there on the left, and kind of developing that as more of the formal front. And then on the west, the top of the slide, more of that kind of backyard approach and connection to the outdoors. And we'll show some imagery here in a minute. Access drives around the building, and just really continuing to develop this whole campus as a cohesive whole. It's really going to kind of transform the overall look and feel of how the middle school and the high school will look. Go to the next one, Kurt. On the outside, this is the eastern face of the new middle school. It faces the parking lot and the main kind of Drake Road entrance. So new entrance to the middle school, and that architecture and the aesthetic, kind of how it ties into the rest of the campus and the high school and more formal appearance. And again, just providing some of those iconic elements that start to really make it unique to the Indian Hills School District. Go to the next one. The other significant part of this project is the connector between the middle school and the high school. And this enclosed piece that not just provides access between the buildings and a lot of the programs, it becomes this really primary community entrance into the building. And you can see some of that formal aspects that are really going to make this kind of a unique part of this campus. Bus turnarounds and really making that something that connects the whole campus together as a whole. It's just a different image, more of a nighttime shot, showing some of the transparency and visibility into that space. And it really gets going to become, for those of you that came to some of the performances over the past weekends or so, if you can imagine going into this space that has a really, again, kind of unique, more formal approach to it. And off to the left, some access to board offices and some community spaces that, again, will make this really kind of dynamic space on the campus. The next couple images really look more at the west, so the opposite side of the middle school. And we talked about this connection to the outdoors. It has more of a backyard feel, a little less formal. The development of these outdoor spaces, the ability to actually get outside the school building, which happens often, but in this case, it becomes more of a opportunity to engage with nature and outdoor space. Because the new middle school is quite a bit smaller footprint than the existing, being able to capture back a lot more green space and make use of that for throughout the day and throughout the school year. And the next image is just a different view of those same outdoor spaces, these project porches as we're calling them. So each grade level will have a connection, access to these outdoor spaces. I think we're really just excited about how that's developed over the course of the project. The plan itself is the floor plan of the middle school, high school. Middle school on the left again, and just again continue to develop the overall program. The central hub, what we're calling the village green, which I'll talk about here in a minute. Administrative spaces, these neighborhood spaces for each of the grades, 6, 7, and 8. There's Parsons building will be 2-story, and there's again all the academic spaces and arts and music spaces around the auditorium, athletic spaces. So really again, this whole plan really starting to come together and become something really special here at the middle school. Go to the next one. On the inside, again, some views of, this is the main reception, we're calling the welcome center of the middle school. And you'll see some consistency as we're developing the material palettes and branding throughout all of these spaces. So this will be kind of one of the first spaces people will engage as they come into the middle school. Go to the next one. I mentioned before this idea of the village greens. This is really the main hub and center of the middle school. It's a two-story space you'll see here in a minute, but a lot of these STEM spaces, media center, engineering, different kinds of learning labs, a lot of flexibility, and really the opportunity for a lot of these spaces to promote creativity and innovation, and a lot of things that are really key to Indian Hill and what happens here in the school district. And so this really become a really vibrant hub for activity within the middle school and really within the entire school, and high school as well. So go to the next one. Again, some images of this village green concept. some connections between the two floors, loft spaces, different learning lab spaces. Again, lots of flexibility, places for students to engage and faculty to interact, and just again becomes a really dynamic opportunity for connectivity and building community within the new middle school. These neighborhood spaces is again kind of a blow up of one of these for each grade. Again, has a kind of cluster of classrooms around a central common space they can come out into, and again, there's lots of shared opportunities for learning and activities. And then also access to these outdoor porches, outdoor spaces you can see up there to the left. Lots of glass and visibility and daylight and all the kind of things that really make, I think, learning happen. Dining commons, again, revamping the entire cafeteria space, the kitchen and servery, and kind of thinking about the kinds of food and how that's delivered, but also just opportunities, again, for social interaction, kind of multi-purpose space that can be used for all kinds of different activities. This also opens up onto some outdoor patio space, and again, just another opportunity for engagement, interaction within the new middle school. And then last with the middle school, again, this connector element I talked about earlier on the outside. New entrances into the auditorium. So the space you walk into now will actually become some restroom and concession spaces potentially, and then you have more of this pre-function lobby space outside of the auditorium. So the doors you see, the red doors on the left and right, are actually the entrances into the auditorium. And then this also then connects into the athletics, so the gymnasium, a lot of those spaces, new restrooms. And so again, the idea of this really becoming a central community space, not just during the school day, but after hours as well, as people come into the new middle school and high school, opportunities for engagement, interaction, and so on. So just again, a really dynamic, I think, special space that'll kind of transform this whole campus. At the elementary school, again, lots of changes and development. Looking at parking and flow has always been a big focus on the campus of the elementary school. So as we build the new wing kind of on the parking lot in the back, they'll continue to use the sawtooth that's there today for swing space up until the end. But that new wing really becomes a central space for arts and creativity. Again, some outdoor learning spaces, improved flow for both bus and car traffic, and then complete revamping of the outdoor play spaces on the opposite side. Dealing with drainage, obviously, which has always been a big focus, but also just providing more opportunities for different kinds of outdoor play, access in the building, outside the building, this multi-purpose gym kind of performance space, and again, really trying to enhance that campus. On the outside, this is the new addition, more glass, again, more connection to the outdoors, still kind of tying into the architecture of the elementary school. So lots of the same kinds of materials. You can kind of see the gymnasium, auditorium space in the background there, but again, new entrance, and again, providing opportunities for connection to the outside. Go to the next one, kind of just another view of that same space. Those larger glass volumes is art studios and iLab spaces that both, again, can connect outside, lots of daylight, and again, just providing a different kind of space, a different kind of environment that doesn't exist currently in the elementary school. Revamping the entrance to the elementary school. So again, just a little bit different, kind of update, fresher look, but also dealing with some security, access improvements that weren't there today. And then just, if you look at some of the branding materials, right, just to tie all these buildings together. If you go to the next one, and looking at the actual new addition itself, which is going to house most of the unified arts, and looking at kind of connecting into that space. So again, some central common areas, opportunities for connectivity, flexible spaces, the multi-purpose auditorium and gymnasium, and just creating a lot of these, again, opportunities for types of learning that just aren't currently exist in the elementary school. Entrance to the new wing, so through this new gateway space you saw from the exterior image, has a little bit of a iconic look to it, and be used for after hours as well as during school. Some branding, again, as you enter into that space. And then similar to the middle school, right, is creating the central hub of activity. So this is their kind of smaller version of the middle school village green. Again, opportunities to spill out. The blue kind of glass you see to the right is the iLab space. So that's the opportunity for that to actually open up into this collaboration area, some skylights and daylight. So again, certain times of day, just very dynamic space. where lots of different kind of activities will be able to happen, supporting creativity, innovation, learning throughout the elementary school. Go to the next one. And then the iLab itself for STEM, flexible learning. Again, it opens up onto that village green. All kinds of workshop spaces. There's green rooms and different kinds of technology, 3D printers, all that kind of fun stuff. But again, just a really fun, dynamic area that's going to provide all kinds of opportunities for elementary school students. Even the kind of the flow and corridor spaces in this building, still opportunities for learning to happen. So different kinds of seating, opportunities for displaying student work, and showcasing what's going on in that building, even outside the classrooms. And then just kind of an initial view, kind of under development still, but this kind of gym auditorium space, again, thinking about how it can be used both for performances, obviously still for recreation, much larger than the existing one is, for multi-purpose uses. And again, just providing those opportunities within the elementary school, but also the district as well. Just having a lot more opportunities for after-schools programs, during school programs. The primary school, as far as the campus and the site, most of the focus has been on the new entrance, which is that little red space down at the bottom, enhancing that obviously and as you approach, but also again, outdoor play, same thing as the elementary school. So revamping outdoor play space, both hardscape and softscape, thinking about flow of traffic and security. So there's some enhancements to buffers and gateways and things as well outside of the primary school. Some images of the new addition and new entrance to the primary school. So thinking about scale and material and trying to still balance what that building looks like and the appearance of that, and still providing some branding. So there's some brick and stone and glass, and providing some playscape spaces, having it at a smaller scale for the kind of students that are in that building, and just provide more welcoming, inviting kind of environment for the primary school. The next one, again, just looking at the overview, focus on entrance and lobby and multi-purpose spaces, the cafeteria and all those spaces around it will all be touched as part of this primary school project. The next one, Gary. Again, entrance on the left as you come into the new addition, and then through, and then you can see on the right, there's the reception space. So again, some of the same kinds of language finishes that you saw in the other buildings, and create this welcoming environment, thinking about safety and security, and thinking about, again, the size and scale of the students that'll be here. It really becomes the first thing that community members see as they come into the district. And so that's been an important aspect of this building and how it can become something that's welcoming and inviting, kind of set the stage for their journey of learning. The multi-purpose room, revamping that, taking out the tiered seats, make that more functional. Technology, some of the different kinds of finishes that would be in that space. More windows for some more light. The next one. Once you get into what's currently the lobby, we're going to revamping that space, providing some opportunities again for engagement, dynamic learning and play. You can see on the right, there's kind of this raised platform with some interactive features for students to use during the day and after hours. And then as you walk back through into the building, again, places for displaying student work. And if you walk in that building today, even they do a great job of just making it as dynamic as possible. So providing that, allowing that to still happen, but within some new spaces and new environments. The dining is a complete gut and redo and complete transformation, and moving the kitchen away so that you can actually see into and provide daylight into that space. Lots of color and light, materials, new kitchen, new servery. Just provide, again, those kinds of spaces for primary school students that can get them excited for learning and being at school, chances to connect to the outdoors. And then this space will also be multifunctional, right? So it can be used for after-school functions and gatherings. That, again, is currently doesn't exist within that building. New bathrooms as well. And then the auditorium, really a refresh, facelift, new seating, acoustics, curtains. You can see the ceiling as well, redoing that. Again, just making it more of a performance space and functional. Obviously, the music teacher and the work they do in there is really great. And so, building on that and just making it function. It's a bit outdated, and just making it become a nice performance space. Transportation, still planned improvements to the transportation building, primarily focused on some amenities, bathrooms, and kitchenette spaces and meeting spaces, HVAC, paint, those kind of things. So planned improvements to the transportation building, provide some enhancements for drivers and for the staff that work over there will happen as well. Just high level too, obviously these projects continue to integrate safety and security goals and aspects into all of the projects. Looking at not just things like access control and glass and these kind of things. If you go to the next one too, Kirk, looking at some examples of how we can incorporate safety and security into all the projects. So it does start at the entrances, obviously, but also as you get into the buildings, making them welcoming and inviting, thinking about materials, so people feel like it's a place they want to be and take care of. Surveillance and visibility, where staff are situated and how flow works throughout the building are all very important, whether it's the landscape, like I say, or the building elements. And so this is something that we take very seriously and have continued to develop, working with the village as well, to make sure that these buildings are safe and secure, but also welcoming, inviting, and it doesn't take away from, again, everyday learning that happens in these spaces. Same with sustainability. There's also been a big push and focus on all these projects and how we can ensure that they are high performing, but also that they're places that can provide teaching tools, opportunities to further educational goals, and how that plays into the idea of sustainability moving forward. You go to the next one, Kirk. Example again on the middle school, as we showed, the fact that we're actually recapturing a lot of green space, thinking about stormwater, thinking about plantings and landscape and shading and daylight, all these kind of things that play into, again, not just the performance of the building itself, which will be high performing, but also just how do they engage the environment, how do students feel, comfort. So all those things are important that we're incorporating into these projects, material choices, so that they're highly sustainable, but also that they're high performing and will be here for a long time.
So just go back one more. So here in the middle school, where we have access out from the classroom, what safety measures are we taking there? Like, they have access to come out of their classrooms, right? So are they secured? Like, when kids are outside, is there railing or something so that no cars or anybody is coming inside when the kids are outside?
Right, yep, the question about kind of securing some of those outdoor spaces, or is that kind of what you're getting at? One, like you said, that side, particularly in the middle school, preventing any kind of vehicle access and that kind of thing will be one aspect of that, but also just locations of barriers using landscaping as well. Obviously, the access into the building from those spaces are secure access points. And so there's a level of security just in the kind of buffering and landscape and visibility out into those spaces. And obviously not allowing people just to enter into the building from those sides as well. So we're not planning to put lots of fences and gates necessarily around these spaces, but kind of how we deal with it with buffers and how we deal with it with access control into the building is kind of handling that lighting, visibility, and those kind of things to make sure that they are safe, secure spaces. Yep. So, moving on to more interesting things, budget and schedule. I'm going to let Pete Becker with Skanska come up and give a quick overview of kind of where we stand with some of these elements, and then Mike can get up as well. So, Pete.
Good evening. My name's Pete Becker. I represent Skanska USA Building as part of this team. Of everybody in this room, we oversee the construction. We've shared this slide a lot in the past. The red box around the month of March sort of shows where we're at. We're at a critical stage of the job. We get design documents here end of this week to go start hitting the market for a lot of packages, and then final construction documents are due to us April 8th. So it's a critical piece of where we're at. We'll get into a little bit of next steps, but you're going to see a lot of me at the next several months of the board meeting. In April, we're bringing the concrete and the steel. In May, we start getting into the core and shell roofing packages, and we're just going to keep bringing stuff on so we can start getting materials on board. You know, the end of the goal is the original master plan is we got to be ready for kids in this fall of 23. You know, some added scope that may dip in. We'll get into that a little bit in a minute about going into the fall, but we'll go ahead. And I think the next slide, we're going to step up with let Mike sort of over talk about, well, after I get with schedules, we're going to jump into some budget stuff. So middle school, pretty much we're done with the demolition. We're moving heavily into site work. That'll probably go a little bit more in past March, you know, with weather and rain and stuff like that. But the goal is here towards the end of March, first week of April, we want to be able to start putting structures in the ground. And then that'll continue on the middle school through the August of 23. High school, you know, obviously this summer we're going to start knocking out some stuff in the front of the building, try to maximize the summer work for the high school auditorium for this area, and then remaining renovations in the summer of 23, pushing that to the second summer. Primary school work at the elementary, basically we got to start this summer and we got to be done in August of 23. So you'll start seeing some things change around with, you know, construction fences going up, layouts changing. You know, we've spent a lot of time with Jim and each of the buildings teams to go through logistics and parking and parent drop-off, and we're still working through that. But feel like we got a pretty good plan, and Jim can talk to that when we get into Q&A. Primary school, this summer's fire suppression work. Entry additional work will start probably towards Christmas break, beginning of the year, mainly because material deliveries. You know, it's not going to take a long time to put the addition up on the front. We don't want to start it and make a bunch of disruption to the community and your administrative staff while we're sitting around waiting for roofing and glass and glazing and stuff. And then the big summer of 23, we're going to knock out the kitchen and dining area. On the next slide. This is just a quick shot of some updated photos. You'll start seeing more of these as we get cranking. I mean, if you go out front now at the middle school, you can see we're clearing trees. We're starting dirt work pretty heavily, and you're going to see a lot of activity picking up here in the next few months. Next slide. So, Mike, I'm going to let you talk about overview.
Thanks, Pete. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Mendenhall. I'm with MCS and Associates, the owner's agent on this project. The intent of this slide was just to provide everyone with a very high-level overview of the budget. This slide is to provide you the financial information regarding the original master plan, also added scopes of work, expanded or enhanced spaces. I would start with the original master plan budget of $77 million. This budget was established with very specific scopes of work in mind to be completed throughout the district. Work included new construction, additions, and renovation work. After the project team has worked through the design and estimating of the original master plan, Skanska, in collaboration with MSA, are estimating that cost to be $78,600,000. So we're looking at about $1.6 million higher than the original budget. This is due to market conditions. The industry has seen a significant increase in material cost over the last year plus. With everything going on right now overseas, I don't expect this to cool off anytime soon. So it's something that not just this project, but every project, you know, that is moving forward right now is experiencing the same things. Those market conditions, material cost, steel, roofing materials, concrete, and even equipment. And I don't think it's the materials on the equipment so much. I think it's more with supply demand. It's the lead times. If you don't get your place in line, you're probably not going to get it on time. So with that in mind, knowing we're $1.6 million over budget, if the district were to move forward with the original master plan, you know, as your owner agent, I feel very confident, it would be my recommendation that we move forward with the project. And I'm confident because I know what we have in non-construction contingencies, owner contingencies, and CMR contingencies. And not to mention that the majority of this work has not even been bid yet. So, and I'm going to look at Pete, but it would be my expectation that Pete and his team would be very strategic in the bid packages, and they would package them in such a way that we would get good subcontractor participation and make this a very competitive process, and hopefully we're driving the numbers down. So with that, as I mentioned before, we have added scope, expanded spaces, and enhanced spaces. We've created line items, and we've put estimated costs for each. So if you look at each line item and you come clear to the bottom, you can see our original budget of $77 million. If we were to do everything that's on this slide, we're looking at $90,741,390. So there are additional slides, and I'm going to let Chris go over the remaining slides, and he'll provide you some greater detail into what goes in those numbers. Chris?
Thanks, Mike. So again, just high level, I just want to touch on these and we can have some Q&A. We kind of dig into a little bit more of the detail in each of these slides for each of the schools. So some of the scope, as I talked about earlier with the design slides, the blue areas are really kind of the major renovation, the red being the construction, new addition, and then some additional renovation. And the gray areas, we're just doing some minimal work. So you can see at the primary school where it stood during master plan, where it stands now, some of the added scope items up there relative to, in some cases, either I think 2 of the items up there are sanitary, some sanitary piping. I think as additional investigation has occurred in this building, mostly in the gray areas, which are areas, like I say, they weren't planned to have as much work done, that determined that some additional work needs to happen to make some repairs to the sanitary piping in that building. Most of the work that will happen in the blue and the red, a lot of that work is happening there. It's just the areas that work wasn't going to occur. There's some plumbing fixtures. All the classrooms in the primary school have restrooms in them, which is great. Some of those fixtures are getting to the point where they will need to be replaced here in the near future. And so there was a recommendation by the team to consider doing some additional work in those restrooms as part of the project. And then beyond that, there were some additional enhancements in and around the building that bring that total closer to 11 million. You can see there at the bottom from where it was. If you go to the next one. 2 of the items, as we mentioned, just high level, we talked about sanitary and the bathroom, just kind of gets into a little more detail about those 2 particular items, just because they are some things that were discovered as the project continued on. And the consideration for those, and starting to look at those as part of the base project work, and just why we thought that made sense. For the elementary school, and you can see again where the base versus the master plan, say, versus the current, some of the added scope items in here. A couple I'll just touch on briefly. Some of the outdoor learning, as I say, there's a lot of work that's planned as part of the base scope on the outside of this building with playgrounds and play spaces. That letter A you see in the middle. I think as this project developed, there's some opportunities to do some additional outdoor learning space in that little kind of courtyard space that was created. And so some of the additional cost recommendation is, again, to take potentially, if it allows for it, to do some additional enhancements to that space, additional pavers, some covered areas, additional furnishings, that kind of thing, just to make that more functional. The other one is PV ready. So the district has been exploring, either now or in the future, the potential for solar on a few of these buildings. The new additions, both here at the middle school, you'll see too as a line item, are the obvious places that, if solar could be placed on these roofs, those are the ones you would do it, because we're designing them now. And so there was a little bit of a premium to have the structure designed to accommodate solar panels and the weight and the load that goes along with that. And so there was a recommendation, again, to incur some of that cost now to ensure that these buildings could potentially have solar on them either now or in the future. And so you can see the total at the bottom. I'll just point out too, I meant to mention on the primary school, all of these items, both here at the primary school, both the base and the additional scope items, the team feels like still allow these buildings to be completed in the 2023 kind of time frame. The sanitary and some of the things at the primary school, I think there's some work there that the team needs to sort of investigate and see if that might go beyond that a bit. But I think for the most part, all this work, we feel like, it can still be done within the original time frame. If you go to the middle school, high school, a little more significant, we've combined these together just because they're so integral. So again, you see the kind of master plan versus current. And again, a lot just because of the size and scale of this building, it starts to get into some of those market conditions Mike was talking about. If you go to some of the added scope, we touched on a few of these outdoor. So here, when we talk about outdoor space, again, as we showed in some of the imagery, still lots of opportunities, lots of things in the base work that will connect to the outdoors and have opportunity for outdoor space. That additional cost is really, again, above and beyond. So it's doing some additional expanded patios and seating areas and lighting and these kind of things that would just enhance those even more potentially as an option, which is the letter A on this particular slide. Up at the top there too, again, the PV ready, same idea. This middle school, it's bigger, so the upper level roofs on the building would be designed to be able to accommodate solar at some point in time. There's some things with some HVAC equipment and some enhancements to the HVAC to make them more efficient and kind of more consistent with the other equipment in the district. And then when you get below that, below the first set of items, what's been talked about or looked at, letters B and D, has to do with some enhancements to some music, some enlarged music spaces. Again, as part of the master plan, there was always planned to have some new music spaces in the middle school, and then renovations to enhancements to some existing music spaces in the high school. These plans showed the potential to have some additional expanded music space as part of the new middle school addition that would house both middle school and high school music programs. And then letter E kind of goes hand in hand with that. If some of those spaces would shift over to new, some of those existing spaces could be converted to some other athletic, wellness, recreation kinds of spaces potentially, which is what the letter E represents. And then C is a connector. Again, it was always planned that these buildings would be connected through an enclosed means so that you could walk between the buildings and be in a controlled environment. Through development of the program and talking with stakeholders and the opportunity again for that to become this really central community space. There's some additional opportunities for restrooms and concessions in the existing auditorium lobby, which is some of the blue you see around the auditorium, as well as some additional community amenities and spaces within the connector that kind of required that to get a little bit bigger than what was originally planned. But I think spaces that the district felt like need to be considered within that particular addition. This one, as you can see at the bottom, we noted, as far as the base scope that you see up here, even including some of the connector and letter B, things that could be done still within the time frame. There's some additional music space, I think letter D in particular, that's been talked about more recently, and some of those things I think would have to be visited with the team to determine. Now that may again go into the fall of 2023 to complete all of that work. But again, we still feel like the majority of this can still be done within the time frame that was originally laid out by the district. Transportation, we always put it last, but transportation, again, plans for that, you can see the original budget versus where we are, so it really kind of hasn't changed significantly, and just continue to develop the work there, but that still on budget and within the time frame that was originally planned for transportation. Let me touch on this real quick. Just as part of the overall project too, and then we'll stop for questions here. The overall energy project that's been going on, in addition and parallel to all the other projects, some updates with that. Work currently stands. As you know, most of that work has been completed and is really moving into the measurement and verification phase. You can see where the budget sits at this point, how much has been spent to date on the different projects. There's some controls work and things that are still being looked at throughout the building, but a lot of the equipment, a lot of the work has already been implemented. And like I say, really Moats and their team are working with the district to do some measurement verification moving forward to ensure that that project continues to move in the direction it needs to. So really just in conclusion, again, we can open for questions. As mentioned, we're continuing to finalize design. As Pete mentioned, a lot of the stuff we're getting ready to send back to Skanska over the next month or so that they can be bidding and providing GMPs for that work, which will be happening here over the next couple months. the early site work is already underway. You can see all the dirt moving out on site. And Skanska, their team, and the district have been working together very closely on the sequencing. So they're really one of those steps too, as they're looking at summer work and the phasing of the work over the next year and a half, making sure that the disruptions and those things can be minimized and that school can continue to operate. Something that's continuing to be developed. And obviously, as I mentioned, the energy project, measurement and verification. So really continue to move forward with the team. Really excited about where we are. I think we all feel like we're in a good place and have, working with Jim and Kirk and Mick and the administrative team to really make these projects, moving in the right direction and successful. So at that, we can open it up for any questions you might have.
I actually have two questions. The first is, when we're looking at some added scope, it's my understanding that we have about $6.5 million built in as contingencies. And I'm just wondering, what's the timeline where we could recoup some of that and realize some of those savings?
Yeah, I will be happy to answer that. Typically on our owner contingency, again, non-construction, all those dollars that are, belong to the district, so to speak, we would like to get out of the ground, hopefully we've mitigated most of our risk at that point. That's a milestone for us. I think, we get somewhere around 25% complete. We'll certainly take a look at that. The owner contingency specifically. I can't really speak for Mr. Becker and his team, but there's CMR contingency as well. Anything that we believe any risk we believe we've mitigated, we can put a value to that, and then I think we can start pulling that back in, and that can be dedicated to various scopes of work that we may want to do during the project. Pete, if you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I think, what we like to do is, I think CM contingency and the DD estimates around 1.2 million. Historically, we try to shoot for a goal to give back 50% of that, right? That's our goal. A lot of times we exceed it. What we like to do is then take ideas of what are the district's priorities. And we treat our contingency like it's yours. We treat your contingency the same way. We always try to make more. So if we have a good bid day, let's say all of a sudden we have some bid day savings, first thing we would do is sit down and look at what are your priorities and what are the priorities we need to make decisions on now. And then maybe we don't roll that bid day savings into contingency. We make some decisions to purchase some alternates. Some districts want to get all the enhancements they can. Others have, hey, we're going to get a lot of them, but then we want to try to, save money at the end of the day and maybe put it back into a fund or something like that. So it really depends on your district's goals, and we just keep pushing.
Pete, can I just ask for clarification, because a lot of people aren't aware of some of this, the percent of completion. Mm-hmm. So is there a general window of when we reach 25% completion, just for people, so because of the question?
Yeah, we would look at it typically on the duration of the hard construction schedule. Once we start putting footings and foundations and steel on the ground, then we would count it based on months. So we like to do, we typically look at it 25%, 50, 75, and obviously at the end 100 for contingency to give back to a client. On an owner's contingency, like Mike was saying, once you're past the point where the risk is less, then you can start looking at owner contingency and say, how can I enhance the scope of our project? And that's a monthly discussion at every meeting where, once we start construction, hey, where are we at? And we track it just like any other cost.
Thank you. The other question I have is kind of similar. And I think you touched on it a little bit about the bid packages, but is there still an opportunity in all of this for value engineering, and at what phase will we assess that value?
We don't stop. I mean, there's a lot of jobs where we've gotten bids, we've got through the construction design process. We always ask, when we go sit down with our subs that we're reviewing with, and a lot of times, the MSA team and Mike's team will be in those meetings. One question we always ask is, what kind of ideas can you bring to us that would save money? Not quality, because we don't want to just switch out a floor to go to a cheap version of floor. We want to make sure, but if there's a different kind of opportunity for a different brand of material that's equal, things like that. And there's been a lot of times where we've done, we get under construction and somebody comes up with an idea. Hey, if we change this detail, we could save some money. Now you take a lot of those little things and they start adding up. And these, even when we get the GMP docs and we go through that, our teams create lists. And it's not that we're trying to devalue anything. We just want to bring people ideas. And sometimes you bring a bunch of lists and you come out with some that are pretty productive ideas.
And just a couple questions. Thanks, you guys, for presenting. So one thing I think would be important, I know Chris had mentioned a few times, potentially things could creep into the fall with additional scope in some, different areas. I think it would be important to, as a team, be able to get that information to us so we really have an idea, like, creep into the fall, is that what that means and what that looks like, so that we can see what that might impact, the kids. Couple other questions. On the elementary and the primary, where we have a lot more flat roofs, are the HVAC rooftop units, are they pushed farther back? Is there enough of a facade to where we're not going to see those?
Yeah, so actually almost all the equipment are inside enclosed. We call them penthouses. So if you've ever seen, if you look out at the high school, right, you have these kind of taller. So an elementary school, all the new equipment and the existing equipment is inside. They're inside enclosed, spaces up on the roof, so they won't be visible and they'll be hidden. And same thing with the middle school. Most of the equipment, with the exception of, like I said, there's an existing unit on the existing gym that'll be replaced, but everything will be inside.
And those penthouses will cosmetically look right.
Absolutely.
Like I've seen penthouses that, it's like, hey, we put a barrier around it, but it's obvious what it is.
Yeah, it'll be an architectural feature.
Okay.
Is that a good way to say?
And then a couple other questions, thoughts. I know that we had mentioned before, just thinking through the landscaping package and how we sustain that. And so just thinking through, if we move to that place where we're doing some irrigation, that's built into making sure that we've got the ability to do that versus that's post after that.
Yep.
And I've just got a couple more. One other thing is, have we looked at all in any of the packages from a security standpoint of cameras in the back of the middle school and those places? Because we're creating a space to have a lot of exterior usage that's very different than, hey, let's go to recess, right? And so thinking through, have we looked at that? One, do we have security cameras back there? Two, is there a way to tie that in with the Rangers? We have to think through privacy issues and those kinds of things, but have we started looking into that? Is that something you guys have looked at?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been part of the discussion. There's several aspects of that already in the packages. We're working closely with the Rangers and the village as far as implementation of that, where they need to go. There's planned for a number of different kinds of video, surveillance, access control, all on both sides of the middle school. And like I said, it's been close, and at the elementary school as well, so close discussions with Rangers and how that all kind of comes together and implements that. But security consultants on the team that are helping kind of work through that as well. So yeah, absolutely, that's all part of the base design that's already in there. Yeah.
I figure you guys had it covered. And then two last questions. One is on the primary auditorium, and I'm not sure how many seats that holds and whatever, but potentially making a middle row and separating that too, just because with all the little guys and gals, it's a lot tougher to, at the high school you can cruise through, but over there with a little, you're carrying a kindergartner, and usually if you got a kindergartner, you got a couple little ones. I know from personal experience, it's tougher to get through. So I don't know if that's been an option.
Yeah. So yeah, same. We're as we developed it, because we get new seating in there, as we're developing the seating layout, working with a couple of different vendors to look at optimizing seat count, but also providing, I think we've looked at as many as 3 rows, possibly one down the middle, possibly one's on the side, so that's all in working with the music teacher over there and the theater folks at the primary school. And that plan, let's come up a couple of times, making sure that there's adequate ways to get in and out. But we are looking at either, like I said, either two kind of in the, sort of on either side in the middle or one down the middle. And I think as we develop that seating layout, we can share that with you guys.
Thank you. And then the last question is, when you come around the high school, over towards the tennis side, and obviously there's going to be a lot more opportunity for community potentially and folks to go around that way. Cosmetically, you've got the high school dock, you've got a lot of other stuff. Have we looked at any kind of package to, if the community is potentially coming there already, right, for a lot of events, and what that's going to look like cosmetically on that side? Is that something we've looked at?
Of the high school, you're saying?
Yeah, off the high school.
Yeah, and there's actually, I think, as part of, eventually, I think it's part of the space scope as well, but there's some plans for that. Right now, there's a central plant, some other equipment that's going to eventually get pulled out of there and become part of integrate into the central plant, which is part of the overall master plan. So once that happens, looking at like what those, what some of those areas maybe could be changed to that will no longer need to be as much mechanical, screening, landscaping, and around that side to enhance the look and feel. Again, I think really the team's been thinking about the whole campus across the board, right? What are some enhancements that can happen, particularly with that new drive going around and security gates, but we're showing, it shows it up to a point, the middle school, even the front of the high school and some of the plaza work, again, that all just feels cohesive when it's all said and done.
Thank you.
Yep.
This may be more of a question for Pete and for Mike, but can you quantify in any way, in both dollars and time, the savings and then the efficiencies of taking the added scope, particularly for to that side of the auditorium with the additional band and music rooms, of doing it now versus doing it later? Certainly there's value in having the construction crews here and the disruption, but can that be quantified in real dollars, or at least estimated, and then also on the timeline?
So I was having a hard time hearing. The cost of do the now for the additional stuff on the back?
Yeah, so for the added scope, looking at the band, the orchestra, the symphony rooms on that side of the auditorium, can you quantify the time savings and the dollar savings of doing it now while we're currently bidding the project, where we have the contractors, where you guys on site, the subs on site, we're bidding it all as part of one larger package, so I'm sure there's some economies of scale there. I just wonder if we can, ballpark percentage that.
Yeah, when we were having discussions a little bit back then, I don't have the numbers on the top of my head, but I know we did an exercise saying, hey, here's what it is today, here's what it would be if you did it, say, 2 or 3 years down the road. And there was that price delta. So I'll have to get with Mick and go through the numbers we sent over and just quickly double check them here in the next day or two. And then I'll give them back, I'll send that back through Kirk and Mick, and then that way they can share that information with you. I just don't have it on top of my head tonight.
No, Shred, I don't think anybody can predict what things will cost in 3 years from now. Just there has to be efficiencies, I'm assuming, in doing this all now, as opposed to waiting 3-5 years down the road and coming back and doing in addition to the auditorium.
Yes. You could be probably $100,000 just in general conditions a month.
That's what I'm getting at. What kind of, what are the soft sunk costs we're gonna have to repay if we do it later as opposed to doing it now?
I have a few questions. First, as no one asked you about the security cameras. So, we do have security cameras installed right now within the buildings. I'm not sure about if we have it outside too. Like, do we monitor the playgrounds and all those?
Good question, Nikki. Yeah, we do have security cameras and access. We do partner with the Rangers currently. We are looking at upgrading all of that, and we've reviewed it all as a part of the site plan package. And again, the project team as well as Jim have spent a lot of time on that. Those are things we're going to continue to come back to our partners with at the Village to make sure that it's a comprehensive plan. We've had people walk the building for security. Our partners have been through the building, the Rangers and the police, to give us feedback, working with the project team, looking both inside, outside, all of the new possible egress areas, how to cover parking lots, lots, physical barriers, all of those things that Chris kind of touched on. And we will do a more comprehensive preview of all that security when it's time as we're building the buildings to share all that detail with everyone. We've also had some people from our focus group share. I know Ed's in the audience tonight. He's given input and shared opinions along with some other focus group members. But that's an ongoing process to make sure we get it all right as they're being built.
So is that part of the project, or is that going to be an additional cost?
My understanding right now is a part of our project. Now, if we do something that's considered additional scope, the project team, and Mr. Mendenhall is hearing me here, would have to bring that to us and talk to us about that.
My understanding is security is part of the original master plan. It's part of the project. Any added scope or expanded or enhanced spaces, that would also be included in those. If those are chosen, if the district wanted to move forward with that, that would also be included in those spaces as well.
Yeah, because I think we are going into a lot of enhancement places outside, so that kids are more outside and, learning outside activities. So since we are adding more, I think it'll be important that we have some kind of security surveillance, something happening there, so that, either the rangers or the secretaries who are sitting and monitoring it have an extra eye on there. So that is one. The connector. We are adding 300 or how much square footage are we adding there? 3,000 square foot, right? To the connector?
Yeah, it's approximately 3,000 square feet, yeah.
So with the original plan, we had the foundation office and the Braves line in our original plan, right?
Correct.
So
yeah.
that square footage was there. So other than restrooms, what more are we adding? Rest we are renovating, right? The way I understood that we are renovating the concession stand and the athletic department and all those things. So what are we adding to this that's raising that cost?
So like I mentioned, part of it is restrooms, concessions, some of those amenities. Part of it is some additional space for some community gathering, meeting space. There's some athletics. So as we've looked at kind of numbers of restrooms and restroom counts around the gymnasium, adding more restrooms there as well, and shifting those with athletic offices and some of those meeting spaces are out into that connector in order to be able to continue to accommodate those needs. So there's some of those spaces as well. But it's primarily, like you say, community gathering, functions, restrooms, concession kind of spaces, moving through there.
So are we moving that? So what are we doing with that space then? Where the athletic department, the offices and all those places are?
So it's more restrooms, more restroom spaces.
Chris, I think also to clarify though, when you say concessions, you were speaking about concessions on the current athletic side that would be expanded, correct? As well as adding another ticket or concession booth area in front of the auditorium?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Chris, I've got a question. You've been involved since the onset, all of you have actually, but when you look at other projects around and you look at where we are today, are we missing anything? Are there any blind spots? Because we're trying to get something right for the next 30 years. When you guys step back and look at where you were when you started and look at the finished product on paper today, are we missing anything?
Like I said, I think we really feel like, again, working with all the different stakeholders and groups that we've had a chance to talk with over the past, really it's been going on for a number of years, for those of you who have been involved. I think we really do feel like that we've been able to incorporate as a team, thinking of the future, thinking now, 10 years, 20 years. There's some flexibility built in, some additional space to grow into a little bit, as time goes on. That I think, this plan really does, set the school district up well for now and well into the future. So I think we really do feel like, I know there's a little bit of push and pull and some things that we've come back to and said these are things you might want to consider, but I think they really do set you up well for the future, and that we're incorporating everything that we've been able to think of, that we've heard from, from the community, from the district, within this middle school and high school, and this, the campuses at each of the projects.
Thank you.
One more question I have is the auditorium. I saw that it says the primary school auditorium will be renovating from January to August. What will happen for the kids? Like, where will they be during that time? Because the school will be in session, right?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is time all that work out in the front together with the new addition. So if we're disrupting the front addition and we're working through some secondary entrances, could we, Jim, I wasn't part of the primary school meetings, but I think there was some discussion of take that over, get our work done, and then either swing them into the half of the cafeteria kind of area possibly?
Yeah, we're spending a lot of time right now looking at phasing. We're trying to minimally impact what we're doing on a daily basis for our students. At the primary school, there is going to be some impact, but what we're going to be able to do is work on some of those interior spaces this summer to make them usable for next school year. And then when those spaces are done, because of timing, we'll actually get to use the entire building next year until about January 1. And then we will have to close off the front of the building. We've got plans to move our main entrance over to the side of the building. Our parents won't notice much of a difference because we're going to have car rider going over there all year long. So we will do our very best to minimize impact. Safety is always at the forefront of our mind as we build those new systems. And then in the fall of '23, everything will open and we'll be able to utilize that new front space.
I was talking more about the auditorium space because it particularly says that the auditorium will be,
Sure.
And I think this is the time of the year when there's a lot of performances happening.
Right.
So-
Well, and again, we will have some impact there. So we've got a wonderful PE and music department, and they're going to collaborate in our gym. We have a movable wall in there that we're going to utilize next year so that we can have both those things operating. On a beautiful day, our PE, Mr. Mashak, who is retiring, but I know we will continue to take our kids outside when we can, so they will even be able to go outside, and we did that a lot during the pandemic. And then music, of course, will be able to stay in there as well. So we'll accommodate and we'll adjust as we can.
Okay. One last, sorry for so many, but this is important. Elementary school play area. We are upgrading that, right? Because I did not see it on the plan. Or I missed it.
Yeah, it's on there. No, but yeah, that's been a big, focus. So complete redo of that whole, actually some of that work is going to start this summer.
Okay.
Some of the site work back there obviously won't be ready by the end of the summer, but yeah, complete redo of the whole playground area. Some of that area is being raised up. There's some obviously new drainage and things like that, but yeah, that side of the elementary school completely redone, all new outdoor play spaces.
Perfect. Thank you.
If there are no other questions for the project team, I just, again, anybody else at this time? I want to thank you all for preparing that thorough presentation. That was a lot. It's a multi-site project, obviously, with a lot of moving parts, phases, and sequences. Thank you all for all that detail tonight.
Just moving into the resolution item E. I think, first of all, we're excited about the opportunity to, start moving forward as the presentation shared. We're at that critical time of, making some decisions to be able to move forward. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the following 3 items. Item 1, the design development phase submission for the master project to be approved, that the board would approve adding the following additional scope into the project: the replacement of the sanitary and storm piping over at the primary school, the replacement of restroom fixtures in the classroom primary school, the enhancements to the HVAC at the high school, middle school, and elementary, control upgrades at the high school, middle school, elementary, and primary, making the roofs PV ready at the middle school and elementary, the generator upgrades and the expanded connector at the high school, middle school. And then thirdly is the board authorizing the project team to continue with the preparation of the construction documents phase and further development and incorporation of the additional scope, expanded spaces, and enhanced learning environments.
Tweet. Is there a second?
Second.
So I have a clarification question. On number 3, Mr. Davis, where we have the further development and incorporation of the additional scope, expanded spaces, and enhanced learning environments. What we're approving is the design phase, correct?
Correct. That will allow the team to continue designing those spaces. So the board will then, at a further date, be able to approve or deny that additional scope.
Okay.
But at least we'll know, have everything in place, what needs to be done, the cost, et cetera, and we'll be ready to make those decisions.
Okay, great. And I would just ask Mr. Davis, Mr. Konecki, that when we get to that point, I think it would be great for the community and for the board to have an open work session so that we can all discuss everything that there is to be discussed, since this would be all new as compared to what the community voted on. Thank you.
I agree with everything Nancy just said.
Any other discussion from board members?
No, I just think this is the time to make this, set the school up for the next 30, 40, 50 years, and this is worth exploring. This is the time to do it. There's going to be cost savings, and I think it's worth pursuing.
I'll just add that we all want the same thing for the community. We want to have schools that are sustainable, that are the best of the best, that are great academically, arts, and all of our arts programs, all of our athletic programs. So that's the goal that we're trying to get to when we step back and look at the big picture. Again, we're trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can, so we've got to play within the rules, but we want to deliver a world-class product so that this school, to Bear's point, is something that we can be proud of for many, many years to come.
I think we had a second, correct?
Correct.
So, time to vote?
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mr. Summerall?
Yes.
Mrs. Eichholz?
Aye.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes. And with that, we'll ask, is there a motion to adjourn unless there's any other business?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, good. All in favor, are we voting?
Should.
Yes. I vote yes.
Thank you to all of our guests who came this evening. We appreciate you all and the time that you gave.
Exclusive coverage on the Indian Hill Television Network has been a copyrighted presentation of the Indian Hill High School Video Department.